Hello and welcome. My name is Heath Jones, and this is episode number 5 of the Northwood Podcast. The Northwood Podcast is the podcast of Northwood Christian Church, and if you'd like to find out more about us or our ministries, please visit our website at www.ndncc.org. That is www.ndncc.org. Also, you can look us up on Facebook by just typing in our name, Northwood Christian Church. And if you like this podcast, you may well want to subscribe so that you are made aware of future episodes when they drop. I should also add, before we continue, that this podcast is made available by All Indiana Podcast Network, which you can find at www.allindianapodcastnetwork.com, where you can find a variety of other podcasts, all made in the great state of Indiana. That being said, this podcast is supported by advertisers, and the ads are added after I send the recording away, so I can't say when they'll pop up or what they'll even be about. Just know that they are coming. I don't want you to be surprised by the brief interruptions like the one that is sure to come up shortly. So here we go. Today's podcast is called What Belongs to Caesar, and it has a lot to do with the topic of taxes, which is very appropriate as it is early March and we find ourselves right in the middle of tax season. In the question, I guess it's always been a question, this question of taxes and when to pay them, how to pay them, and what is fair to pay. And the question came up 2,000 years ago, one day, when some authorities of Jesus' day tried to provoke a controversial response from Jesus to ruin his public image, or worse. You can read about this encounter in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22, and I'm just going to start reading from verse 17, which goes, and these are the people trying to trick Jesus, posing this question that you were about to hear. They ask, "Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test? You hypocrites! Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head is this, and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. I should start by saying from the onset that I initially entitled this podcast, What Belongs to Caesar, and that is the title that stuck, but when I first posed the question, I really thought it'd be a fairly simple matter of drawing a line down the middle of a page and forming two columns, and on one side writing something like things that probably belong to God, and then on the other side, things that probably belong to whatever civil authorities we're beholden to. And so in the God column, I might write things like my time belongs to God, or my loves, my passions, my thoughts, my prayers, those things. And then in the Caesar column, I'd write the obvious, my taxes, my tax returns, jury duty, my turning out to vote, all of those things that good citizens are told that they should do and that we should do in a civilized society. But then as I really picked it apart, it got a little murky. Things got a little tricky. I began to think of things that our civic authorities claim from us, but I have questions about whether or not they have a right to. For example, does Caesar own my draft card? Should a draft be reinstated? It's a worthwhile question. No easy answer. I could rephrase that, perhaps giving you a bit of my bias here, where my opinion lands. Let me rephrase that. Can Caesar command that I take up weapons and attempt to kill other people by order of the state? Now, of course, some want to be having this as a broader discussion about the topics mentioned just moments ago, just taxes generally speaking and the like. Some are directly opposed to any kind of taxation. I, for one, am not. But these can be highly contentious discussions, to say the least. It's almost as if to bring these things up is like setting a trap, which is exactly what was going on in the story that we just read about Jesus. To give you some context for the story, what you have here are two groups. I didn't read the part that mentioned these two groups, but you have two groups who are approaching Jesus with this question. And each are uniquely positioned in a Roman-occupied Israel. The land of Israel is occupied by the Roman Empire. Israel has been annexed into that empire. And the Herodians, one group that approached him, well, they bore the family name of those who were commissioned by the Roman Empire to rule over the people. They lived in palaces, they facilitated the collecting of taxes, and they made sure that the people stayed in line. Perhaps most importantly, they made sure that the people stayed in line, and they would quell insurrections. Needless to say, they cooperated with Rome and Rome's oppressive ways, and they were paid handsomely for it. But then you have this other group that are walking alongside the Herodians, called the Pharisees. And the ones that we meet in this story are certainly cooperative with Rome, or at least that's the gist that I get, but they weren't necessarily always cooperative with Rome. But in this instance, they have found a common enemy in the person of Jesus. Now, just days earlier, I should mention that Jesus had shown up at the temple in Jerusalem and had flipped over the tables of the money changers, those who had commodified the religious life of Israel in turn for a profit. There's a lot to be said about that as well, commodifying religious life or any other life-giving thing that probably shouldn't have a price put on it. Another discussion for probably another day. All this to say, it's possibly in response to Jesus' challenge in the temple that day that the religious leaders get together and they lay this trap. And it's a sticky trap as well. Is it lawful to pay the tax? And the tax in question was very, very unpopular, to put it mildly. After all, this tax paid for the statues erected in Rome's honor. It paid for the palaces and the fortresses that were erected across the land. It paid for the very soldiers used to keep the people in line. The tax dollars paid by the people went towards the oppression of the very people who paid it. So if Jesus answers, no, it's not lawful to pay the tax, he is speaking insurrection talk, and the penalty for that in the Roman Empire is death. In fact, it's crucifixion. But if Jesus answers, yes, you should pay the taxes, then the common people are likely to turn on Jesus. They would conclude that he was perhaps no better than those whose pockets were lined with Roman coin at the expense of everyone else. So Jesus, aware of these dynamics and aware of their malice, answers, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites?" The word translated as hypocrite literally means actor. So these are actors, not sincere people. They're not coming to Jesus with these questions in good faith. Then he goes on to say, "Show me the coin that's used for the tax." And they bring him a coin called a denarius. And he asks them, whose head is this and whose title? In other words, whose face is on the coin and what is his name? Now, perhaps you know, the emperor's likeness would have been on this coin. And in Jesus' day, the most common coin would read something like Tiberius Caesar, Caesar's name, Tiberius Caesar, and then a caption, "The supreme bridge builder and high priest of the empire." Other coins would read, "Hail, Lord of the earth, invincible, power, glory, honor, blessed, great, worthy art thou to inherit the kingdom." And on Julius Caesar's coin, it showed him ascending into the heavens as a spirit to take his place among the gods. And Augustus Caesar's coin referred to him as the Son of God. So these are coins that shore up this idea that the Caesar is in some way divine and has a divine right to rule the people in oftentimes oppressive ways. And this would be the sort of coin that Jesus' antagonists would have presented to Jesus. In fact, it was debated that perhaps even possessing a coin like this, like the one presented to Jesus that day, was maybe even a violation of the first two of the Ten Commandments, which read, 1, no gods before God, and 2, don't make idols, graven images, or false gods. And the Roman coin, you could argue, broke both of those commands, claiming that Caesar is God and even having a graven image of that false god right there on the coin. But if you were going to trade in these coins, you might find qualifications or reasons to explain your actions to others. So you could hear religious persons of that day, or leaders of Jesus's day, who profited by Rome in Jesus's day. You could hear them saying in objection to this, no, 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 no. True, we might carry these coins in our pockets. For after all, we must be pragmatic. It's just the cost of living in these times, but we would never allow these pagan icons into, say, the temple. No graven image or false gods to be found there. No idolatrous coin will be used to pay for the sacrifices of the people. And this is why you had the money changers at the entrance of the temple exchanging Roman denarii for an acceptable form of currency, one that could be used inside the temple. That is the context for what came before, when Jesus flipped over the tables of the money changers in protest for their exploitation of the people, right at the religious epicenter of Israel. But that leads to a question. I don't know if perhaps you've thought of it before. Why would Jesus flip over tables that were set up to prevent the sacrilege of allowing Roman coin carrying a false god on its face into that holy place? Why would Jesus be upset at this? You'd think that he would be for it. Well, in pursuit of answering this question, I learned something new. The coin exchanged for the denarii was minted entire. It was known as the Tyrian shekel. And it bore on it the image of, get this, the Phoenician god Baal wearing a laurel from the Olympic Games. In other words, the money bearing the image of one false god was exchanged at the entrance of the temple for another. So what gives? Why go through all the trouble? Well, it helps to learn that the Roman denarii was 80% silver, quite costly, but the coins minted entire were 95% silver. So this is the heart, the root of what Jesus is picking at here. The God at question isn't the Caesar. It's not a question of what you owe or don't owe to Caesar. That is not really on the minds of the people exchanging the coins or having these questions about what to do with the coins when you have them. What do you owe to the state? What do you owe to God? What can you keep for yourself? All of this. The question here, the God in question here, isn't the Caesar or the Phoenician god Baal. The real God at play, humming along in the background, so far, a God that has not been given a name, is the very silver that the images are printed on. So we could give that God a name. Historically, it's been known as mammon or money, filthy lucre, to give it a colloquial turn of phrase. In short, the God humming in the background is greed. The questions are driven from a place of greed. And Jesus says, well, whose image is on the coin? Trick question. Trick question. True, the answer is technically Caesar. But the biggest question is, whose image is Caesar made in? And the questioners are forgetting that human beings like Caesar and every other human besides are made in the image of God. So in fact, there is nothing created below or above the heavens that does not in some way bear God's signature. There is in fact nothing that belongs to Caesar. Even if his face is on the coin, he is but a reflection of the God who created him. All of it belongs to and is for the glory of God. The God who is glorified because God is love and calls us towards a greater love. So give to Caesar, I guess, what Caesar thinks he owns. In the end, it doesn't matter because it's all God's. Very, very good answer that Jesus gives. They were trying to trip him up, and he just takes it to a deeper level, one that they could not have anticipated. And once you get this concept, then you think of everything that you hold in your hands very differently, whether it's a Roman coin, an American dollar, or any of your possessions. You think of these things differently. The people in Jesus' day were completely stumped. And remember, before I began this little journey into this story and some musings about it, before I thought I was going to make my list of things that belonged to Caesar and put those in the Caesar column, and then the things that belong to God and put those in the God column. And it turns out that even Caesar belongs in the God column. He has only deceived himself to think that he is a god in his own right, instead of a person who is made in the image of the God who is God, the creator of all. He thought that the coins that bore his image were his. That's why he put his image on it, forgetting that even that image was a reflection of the image of God. There's no getting away from it. And in fact, the coins on which his image was printed were comprised of ores and metals that were also created by God. It just keeps going on and on and on. It's all God's. Caesar is, if he could see it the right way, only the caretaker of the material for a time. And in many cases, these materials aren't worth very much in the first place. I mean, what good is silver for the betterment of human life? You can't eat it or live inside it. It's all illusory. So this false god, the god that Caesar creates, is created by way of a delusion. And the delusion is that the silver can be possessed at all, or that we really ever possessed the objects we gained in exchange for our currency. We learn that nothing in the end is ever truly ours. And of course, all learn this when we die. Nothing is gained under the sun, as the writer of Ecclesiastes would write, or as Jesus would say, that we should put our treasure in more than things like this, things that moth and rust will destroy, for in the end, we lose it. So instead, invest in what lasts. And what lasts is love. Love for God and love for one another. Our relationships, in fact. So in the meantime, give to Caesar what you or I can never really possess, some scrap of the created order. It never was ours, so pay your taxes, big deal. We deceived ourselves when we thought that the coin and the symbols on them were the whole point of living. That's why we get so fixated on these questions, because we think that the coin and the symbols on them are the whole point of living, or the material goods by which we think our existence depends on. The point, the reason for having the things in the first place, is to discover what good things that we can do with whatever we've been given on loan by God. So you want to be rich in the way that matters? Take your denarii, your dollar, your euro, or whatever passes for currency where you live, your Bitcoin even, and buy some food and feed those that you love. Or if their bellies are full, thanks be to God, give it to the poor. Bless others with all that you have and with all that you are, you who are made in God's likeness. Bless others who are also made in God's likeness. What belongs to God? Turns out, by now it's becoming clearer, all of it. It is all a gift given us by God. And it only means anything to us so long as you remember that we are given these things to multiply the love of God, to bless others in this world. You know, those parables about servants who are given talents or coins, and they are lauded for multiplying it. The point of those stories is that we are to take what we've been blessed with, God's creative matter, energy, and love, and then turn that into more so that it may be a blessing to others. So, again, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. It doesn't really matter in the end. I guess I'll pay my taxes. I'll let the Caesars of our day keep thinking that they own what they can never really possess. The important thing is, don't you dare start to think like them. thinking that we can ever really possess any part of God's creation or its creatures for keeps. In the meantime, follow the two great commandments that Jesus names just moments later in the same chapter. Those two commands are love God and love others. So love, in other words. In Jesus' day, these were already time-worn principles within Judaism. And this principle signifies an exchange between our own currencies and the only currency that really matters in the end, how you love God and others. And this will be revealed by how we utilize the small pieces of the created order that have been entrusted to us in the meantime. So how will we use our time? How will we use our material goods in the meantime? How will we use our intellect and our creative abilities? These are the questions that matter. We should use all that we have to spread love in the world and to love others who bear the image and likeness of the God of love. In other words, we are to be a blessing to every person that we have ever met. This is what it means to give to God what is God's, to share all that we have with others in the name of love. We, along with Caesar, have deceived ourselves for far too long in thinking that it was ever ours to begin with. So give it away. You can't keep it. Give to God and others our energy and our lives. And here is an investment in a love that lasts, loving as we have been loved. For love is eternal, and investing in relationships of love is what we will keep and hold and what will give us life. That is what matters. So give to Caesar whatever. But more importantly, give of your life and your energy in the name of love so that it might multiply and be a blessing to others. There is an investment in what lasts. Well, this has been the Northwood Podcast. As I said before, if you'd like to learn more about Northwood, please visit our website at www.indyncc.org, or you can look us up on Facebook by searching for Northwood Christian Church. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe so that you won't miss future episodes. But until next time, my name is Heath Jones, and this has been the Northwood Podcast.